It began when the quiet street of Ashton Way in Brandon, Mississippi was interrupted by the chilling combination of gunfire and screams. There had been an emergency at the Smiley house. At least, that's what 14-year-old Carly Madison Gregg told her friend on March 19, 2024. The friend who had known Carly since the 9th grade could tell something was wrong. Over the phone, Carly sounded jittery, scared, secretive even. Then again, Carly had been behaving differently lately, taking risks the old Carly wouldn't have dared. Was this all just part of her new persona, or had something truly horrific happened? Carly wouldn't tell the friend what was wrong, not over the phone, so the friend had her father drop her off at Carly's house at 4:58 p.m. However, by the time Carly greeted her friend at the door, she seemed remarkably calm, making the question she asked all the more eerie. "Do dead bodies make you squeamish?" Carly then directed her friend towards her bedroom, saying, "My mom is in there." And there her mom, 40-year-old high school math teacher Ashley Smiley, was lying on her back, on the ground, dead. But what happened in the Smiley house that day that led to such a gruesome scene? Well, just before 4 p.m. that day, Carly and her mother had just arrived home from Northwest Rankin High School, an institution that Carly attended as a student and her mother as a teacher. As for how we know what happened next inside the Smiley home, well, that was all thanks to a security camera in the kitchen. While Carly took the dogs out, the footage showed Ashley entering her daughter's room, like she was looking for something. But what? When Carly re-entered the home, she crept up to her room, looking in at her mom, and then walked away. By the time Carly reappeared on camera, she was clearly hiding something behind her back. She peered into the kitchen, as if checking for someone, and then went to her bedroom. And while there was no video camera in Carly's room to show what happened next, the audio says it all. A gunshot. A mother's screams, 2 more gunshots, all captured by the surveillance camera. But as disturbing as these sounds were, it was what happened next that was truly unsettling. There's silence. The dogs have their tails down and have started pacing. Carly re-enters the kitchen, strategically angling herself so the firearm she's likely holding behind her back is out of the camera's view. The teen then sits on a stool, takes her mother's phone, and begins texting. But who was Carly communicating with? That would be her stepfather, Heath Smiley. Yes, posing as her mother, Carly texted Heath, "When will you be home, honey?" The stepfather replied that he'd be at work for a bit longer. Carly gave the message a thumbs up. Her texting session was then interrupted by a sound coming from her room. But if Carly was the only living person in the Smiley home at this point, what or who could it have been? "Help me." Those were the words the surveillance video appeared to pick up. But while Carly stopped to listen, the teen didn't appear concerned. In fact, the next piece of audio has been speculated by Rankin County investigator Zachary Cotton to be Carly singing to her dogs. After all, at this point, Carly likely had no concern that her mother would survive the attack. No, the 14-year-old had made sure of that when she targeted one of those bullets into her mother's neck and another into her skull. However, the teen's master plan couldn't be deemed a success just yet. Carly still had to pull off the grand finale. She just had to wait for Heath to get home. So what did Carly have in store for stepdaddy dearest? After showing her mother's body to her friend, Carly brought out the murder weapon, a .357 Magnum handgun. She then told her friend, "I put 3 in my mom, and I got 3 more waiting for my stepdad when he gets home." According to garage security footage, Heath arrived home minutes later, and before the stepdad could open the door more than a few inches, it was ready, fire, aim likely being an afterthought. Carly's first shot only grazed Heath's shoulder, giving him the chance to overpower the teen and twist the gun out of her hand as she shot off 2 more rounds. Carly and her friend, who she told to wait in the backyard, then jumped the fence, running away. But What made Carly lash out like that? Keith would later claim that he had never seen his stepdaughter in that state, screaming and visibly terrified. She must have been defending herself, but from whom? Keith searched the house for an intruder. He checked their bedroom, the closet, and the spare room before entering Carly's room and finding his wife, Ashley. She was on her back with a towel draped over her face. In a seeming state of distress, Keith called 911.
Okay, sir. Where's your wife? She's dead on the floor of my stepdaughter's room.
The scene was just as intense when officers arrived. Keith was wailing, barely able to open the door or even walk. And now, the same person who had committed this heinous act of violence was on the loose. But how far could a 14-year-old get? Well, it turned out, not far at all. A half hour later, Carly was found a half-mile away from the house, on the side of the road, crawling out of a drainage pipe. The teen was soaked and strangely cooperative.
Step out real quick for me.
Yes, despite her obvious attempt to flee the scene, Carly didn't hesitate to confess to the crime.
Obviously, you fired with a pistol, correct?
In fact, she seemed calm. Was this the behavior of a cold-blooded killer, or was something else going on here? See, when she was speaking with police officers, Carly didn't display the fear or aggression you might expect from a murder suspect. Instead, she was curious.
What is this?
It's a GSR. It shows me which hand did you shoot with.
Okay.
And then, suddenly, as if the full weight situation was finally hitting her, she asked.
All right.
Is my stepdad okay?
I don't know, baby. I can't talk to you about this.
Yes, Carly's top concern was her stepfather, a man she had tried to kill less than an hour ago. Her mother, on the other hand, was never brought up. And as this case gained media attention, internet users would jump to their own conclusions about the nature of Carly and Heath's relationship. Yes, this wasn't your average case, and as it turned out, Carly wasn't your average teenage girl. So, who was Carly Gregg? Carly was special. Gifted, as her family, classmates, and teachers would put it. As a child, she had been so ahead of her peers that she skipped the 3rd grade. At just 13, she scored a 30 on the ACT, a result that falls in the exceptional range for university applicants. And recently, she'd been named Student of the Month and Student of the Year at her high school. Carly was an academic force, seemingly proud of it, as she described herself as a math and history nerd in her Instagram bio. But perhaps Carly wasn't as perfect as she seemed. See, while the 14-year-old was known for her attendance and grades, her academic record wasn't exactly spotless. Previously, Carly had been sent to an alternative school after bringing a Swiss Army knife to class. She had also been caught taking photos of an answer sheet for a test at school for her classmates. And while these were just minor slip-ups for the star student, over the past year, Carly had started rebelling. Suddenly, the 14-year-old was sneaking out of the house, missing curfew, and pushing boundaries, even if that meant drinking hand sanitizer on a dare. She was also increasingly private, texting her friends from a burner phone after her phone was confiscated, seeing secret boyfriends, and hiding social media accounts from her parents. On Spotify, she posted playlists using cover photos of Ghostface, the killer from the Scream franchise, and Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. One playlist she even captioned, "I'm a complete psycho." She had also begun experimenting with narcotics in secret, and on the day of her arrest, she tested positive for marijuana. Yes, in the end, all these changes that could have just been typical teenage rebellion took Carly somewhere darker. But why had a teen with her entire life ahead of her started down this destructive path? Well, it turned out Carly's childhood was no walk in the park. At 4 years old, Carly's sister passed away. Soon after that, her parents divorced. As for her relationship with her biological father, well, it was complicated. Kevin Gregg allegedly suffered from bipolar disorder and substance abuse issues. He was supposedly known for taking narcotics in front of Carly, blowing smoke in her face, and on one occasion when she was 12, forcing her to drink a beer. In fact, the reason the .357 Magnum handgun had been in the home in the first place was because Ashley allegedly feared Kevin would show up at the home. She kept it under her side of the bed, just easy enough to grab in an emergency or for a crime. Carly was also facing her own battles. She had showcased signs of depression and anxiety, and as a preteen, had even started self-harming. But of course, Carly had her biggest supporter by her side through all of this, her mother. When Ashley discovered her daughter was self-harming from information stored on an old iPad, she took her to receive psychological help. After all, According to those who knew Ashley, her daughter was her #1 priority. She would do anything for her. And while Carly might not have had a strong relationship with her biological father, her relationship with her stepdad, Heath, was affectionate. So what happened on March 19 that made Carly turn against her mother and stepdad in the most brutal way? By all accounts, it began as a normal day as the mother and daughter headed off to school and Heath to work. However, during the school day, one friend noticed something about Carly was off. Carly was sitting alone during lunch, and when he made a joke after she spilled her drink, she became agitated. This was unusual for Carly, and the friend suspected she was high. Concerned, he went to the one person he thought he could talk some sense into Carly, her mother. The friend then told Ashley about the narcotics, the vapes, even the burner phone. The next time the friend heard from Carly was 4:20 p.m. that night. Unknown to him, just after she killed her mother, she asked him for help. Later that evening, she FaceTimed the friend on the verge of tears. The friend told Carly not to harm herself or anyone else, to which Carly replied, "Too late." The friend thought they were talking about self-harm. He never imagined anything like this, and neither had the community.
Shock and sadness in Rankin County tonight over the shooting death of a Northwest Rankin high school teacher.
Yeah, her own 14-year-old daughter now in custody, charged with murder and attempted murder for shooting her stepfather.
It's really sad. It's really heartbreaking. It's something that you definitely don't expect, and it was a shock to everybody.
It's definitely not an ideal situation, and I absolutely hate that it involved a child. Hopefully, I'm sending up prayers to the family and everybody around that was involved.
There was no room for argument. Carly had killed her mother. But one question still hung in the air unanswered. Why? Well, since Carly pleaded not guilty to the charges against her, including murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence, and refused a plea deal for 40 years in prison.
And it was your choice and your choice alone to reject that recommendation.
Yes, Your Honor.
That question would have to be answered in the trial. However, when it came to the truth, the prosecution and defense told two different stories. And soon enough, social media was sounding off, drawing attention to an alternative theory that the investigation seemingly hadn't considered. According to the prosecution, Carly had ended Ashley Smiley because her mother discovered Carly's secret life involving narcotics, and from her rebellious behavior to the methodical way she had executed the murder.
She walked with that .357 Magnum behind her back, walked in to her own bedroom, fired 3 shots into her mother.
The prosecution was adamant Carly was no normal teen. She was a cold-blooded killer. The defense, however, argued that Carly loved her mother and was not responsible for her actions because she was experiencing mental health issues that, on March 19, pushed her into a state of psychosis that made her lose contact with reality.
While the events on March 19th were tragic, the events on March 19th were not intentional.
See, after the murder, Carly claimed she was hearing voices, and according to the teen, this wasn't some recent development. Dr. Amanda Gugliano, the director of Forensic Evaluation Services at the Mississippi State Hospital in Whitfield, who had evaluated Carly after her arrest, told the court she said she had been hearing one voice, a male voice, since she was young, maybe around 5 or 6 years old, which is unusual. While Dr. Gugliano and the other mental health experts who spoke to Carly deemed her competent to stand trial, Dr. Gugliano couldn't determine whether she was mentally insane. Child and adolescent psychiatrist Dr. Andrew Clark, however, seemingly had no doubt Carly wasn't in control of her actions the day she took her mother's life. On March 19, Carly recalled being grumpy and irritable. She couldn't focus during class. When school ended, her mother told her she knew about the marijuana, and when they got home, she began searching Carly's room, confiscating 4 boxes of vape pens. Dr. Clark believed Carly when she told him that after she went into the backyard to let the dogs out, her memory went blank, and it wasn't until she was crawling out of the drainage pipe on the side of the road that it came back. After evaluating the teen, he diagnosed her with bipolar II disorder, a mental illness he believed she inherited from her father, along with several other issues.
Mood issues, issues, self, hearing voices, and sleeping difficulty. all, I guess, leading up to January of 2024.
It was in January that Ashley Smiley took Carly to see Rebecca Kirk, a licensed professional counselor for her intrusive disruptive thoughts, anger problem, and trouble sleeping. Carly also began seeing nurse practitioner Olivia Labor for depression. During one appointment on March 12, 7 days before the murder, Carly described feeling like a zombie. The nurse practitioner advised her to taper off the Zoloft she was using and start taking Lexapro. It was Dr. Clark's belief that Carly's mental health crisis on March 19 was worsened by this switch in medications.
When you treat bipolar 2 with an antidepressant medication, you often can make things worse.
However, there was one problem with Dr. Clark's theory. His fellow mental health professionals didn't seem to buy it. See, Carly told both Olivia Labor and Rebecca Kirk that she wasn't hearing voices. There was also no apparent issues with her memory. And while Olivia Labor testified that Lexapro could cause suicide thoughts, she noted that it does not make someone homicidal. What these sessions with professionals leading up to the murder did reveal had more to do with the type of person Carly was. Carly was someone who could be easily angered. She was someone who loved school. She was someone who felt smarter than her peers and could be hostile towards them because of this. In one appointment with Rebecca Kirk, they talked about Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, a novel that eerily foreshadowed events to come.
Very difficult book about a psychopath. He is a student, he is very intelligent, and he has this obsessive thinking of basically planning to murder a woman.
During their last appointment on March 18, the day before the murder, they talked about conflict management. Carly told Rebecca that she found it hard to handle when her mom became angry. Rebecca Kirk and Olivia Labor didn't deny that Carly was troubled, but not in her right mind. That didn't line up with the person they had treated in the months, weeks, and days leading up to the murder. Still, the defense clung to their assessment, using Carly's journals and sketchbook as proof that the teen had been experiencing psychosis. For example, using green ink and different handwriting, Carly had written, "I don't think I'll make it any longer," and "Please help me." When Dr. Clark asked her about the entry, Carly didn't remember it, and on March 12, 7 days before the murder, Carly wrote an entry that was equally unsettling. "I think I had a psychotic break earlier. The whole ordeal is quite silly. I actually spoke with one of the voices in my head. Well, I didn't hear them until earlier today, but I only do then. My particular friend and I were practically screaming bloodthirstily and ravenously. Thank God, physical confrontation was not possible. I sound crazy." Yes, the defense argued that this was all proof of Carly's deteriorating mental state. Dr. Jason Pickett, a forensic psychiatrist, however, came to a different conclusion.
My opinion is that Carly does not meet Mississippi's standard for insanity at the time of the offense, and that she knew the nature, quality, and wrongfulness of her actions during that day.
Dr. Pickett didn't see Carly's writing as a display of mental illness, but theatrical, and possibly purposely so. From the very first entry that read, "I know one of y'all is going to read this eventually," it was clear Carly was not writing for herself, but for an audience. And that meant Carly's written list of her beliefs, including "There is no God," "It's okay to be evil," and "You don't need family," statements like "I choose fire," "It is powerful, beautiful, and deadly. These are the traits I desire, so I choose fire," and mentions of Mussolini, Harley Quinn, and a pen-stabbed page referencing another villain that won a smirk from Carly in court.
Tom Riddle is from Harry Potter series, and he turns into Lord Voldemort. He's evil.
Were all allegedly carefully crafted to establish a defense. But it wasn't just Carly's writing that made Dr. Pickett suspicious. After looking at Carly's father's medical records, he questioned the father's bipolar diagnosis, and Carly as well.
I highly doubt and do not believe that Carly has bipolar disorder.
And when Dr. Pickett evaluated Carly, she didn't seem like someone who experienced psychosis, but rather someone who studied the symptoms.
They usually can vividly describe these things to me, and oftentimes I see them objectively. They can't hide it.
Prosecution argued that Carly's behavior leading up to and after the crime wasn't evidence of mental illness, but of a dangerous, calculated individual. For example, in February, the teen texted a friend, "You don't understand how effing psycho I was that day. I almost murdered my parents." And after the murder, the prosecution argued that Carly's texts and FaceTimes with friends asking for help was clear evidence that the teen knew the difference between right and wrong in that moment. In fact, days after the crime, Carly's stepfather Heath found the kitchen camera in the fridge. This suggested that Carly had moved the camera sometime after the murder, attempting to cover up the crime. But what if Carly hadn't acted alone? As the defense and prosecution argued their cases, the same feeling began spreading amongst viewers at home.
Something about the Carly Gregg case is super weird.
Anyone else think that this is weird?
It's all around weird. It's very weird.
Yes, the internet was in agreement. Something wasn't right, and it all began when Heath Smiley took the stand. See, the man in court, Carly's would-be second victim if the teen had aimed just a few inches higher, was a far cry from the man police found at the scene who still feared what his stepdaughter was capable of.
I went in the back door, she tried to shoot me.
Instead, Heath told the court that Carly and himself got along great. In fact, as Heath described it, their relationship was sitcom-level perfect.
We were always good. We laughed and played and messed around with little video games.
He treated her like she was his own kid, driving her to karate, then, when she quit that, to guitar lessons. He testified that Carly never got in trouble, save for the odd incident at school, and was never violent or even angry. This, of course, went against the anger issue Carly had talked about with her counselor. Still, Heath insisted his stepdaughter's behavior on March 19 was not reflective of the sweet little girl he knew. But after Carly had taken his wife's life, how could the stepfather possibly feel the same way? Well, Heath said he believed that Carly hadn't recognized him during the shooting.
It was like she had seen a demon or something. She was terrified.
And now that she was herself again, the stepfather claimed his feelings hadn't changed. He still loved Carly. On the stand, Heath added weight to the defense's narrative, claiming that he had noticed lapses in Carly's memory before the murder, and that Carly had no memory of the shooting. In fact, Heath was so convinced of Carly's innocence that when the state placed a no-contact order on Carly, he asked the court to lift it. They began communicating on a daily basis about everything but the case, which struck even the prosecution as odd.
They just appear, to be talking about what's going on, their love for each other. I don't understand it, but people process trauma in such different ways.
But from the way Heath joked on the stand,
would you describe her as calculating?
No, except with math.
Seemingly idolized Carly's intelligence.
She's a light year ahead of everything they're teaching.
And smiled when discussing the teen, even her crime.
And is that the same person that shot you with that .357 Magnum on March the 19th, 2024?
Yes.
Social media was convinced something was up. He acts like a teenager in love talking about his girlfriend. Weird. His face lights up whenever he speaks about her. And many believed this supposed obsession was mutual. See, whether it was Heath acknowledging Carly's presence in court or police body cam footage of him breaking down after finding his wife, the stepdad was the only surefire way to make the stone-faced Carly crack a smile or burst into tears. But was this simply a strong father-daughter bond, or was something more disturbing at play? Online speculation grew that not only had Heath been grooming Carly, but that this had been the catalyst for murder.
This is my opinion. Since she is a little girl and it is not a relationship, it was not consent, I believe that he groomed her and that he convinced her, or they came up with this plan together to take out her mother, and convincing her that since she is a minor, she would get she would get no time.
The core of this theory was one question. If Carly was known for keeping secrets, who's to say her stepdad wasn't one of them?
And we know that Carly had a secret boyfriend, and we know that she had burner phones. But do we know where those burner phones were kept? Do we know who the secret boyfriend was, or was she using a burner phone perhaps to message her stepdad inappropriately and plan things that shouldn't have happened?
After all, it was Heath's status Carly had asked police about during her arrest, not her mother. So, was it possible the shoulder-grazing bullet was part of the plan?
And it really makes me think that maybe, just maybe, she never meant to unalive the stepfather.
And if so, did that mean the text she sent Heath from her mother's phone meant more than investigators thought it did?
I feel like that was code word for it's done. Because he said, no, I'm going to be here a little while, but then shows up back at home, not even a little later than he was supposed to.
And then there was the tampering with evidence. See, a few days after the murder, Keith was hit with the realization police hadn't pulled the surveillance footage from the garage camera. On the stand, the stepfather claimed he was trying to help out when he notified the cops about the camera. However, before police arrived, he copied 4 videos over to his laptop, unintentionally removing them from the SD card he handed over to the police.
I was just trying to be helpful at that point and figure out what had happened or why.
But the police didn't see it that way. Instead, they warned Heath about being charged with tampering with evidence. After that, the stepdad hired his own attorney. So, was Heath just being cautious, or did he have a reason to suspect he could be implicated in the crime? After all, grooming was just one of the theories circulating online. Others speculated that Heath helped orchestrate the murder to cash in on Ashley's life insurance, given how quickly their relationship moved from meeting in 2019 to married by 2020. Some voiced that even if the stepfather wasn't directly involved in the crime or cover-up, he bore partial blame. After all, it was Heath who owned multiple firearms in the household where a teen was openly struggling with her mental health and self-harming. As one Reddit user commented, "We're seeing parents now being prosecuted for not locking up their firearms from kids. If I blame this stepdad for anything, it's access to that firearm. All of this could have been avoided. Just devastating." But were there other explanations for Heath's behaviors in court other than guilt? Some theorized the stepdad's disbelief that Carly could do anything wrong was proof that he was another victim of Carly's manipulation. This was a teen who kept a folder on how to emotionally manipulate and gaslight people, with the sign-off, "Take advantage, happy hurting." Others theorized that Heath was just doing what his wife would have wanted, protecting her daughter. In fact, when it came to Heath's supposedly suspicious testimony, where he often seemed monotone and emotionally detached,
Eliminated the police out that my wife had been killed and I had been shot.
some pointed out that it was possible this was due to the stepfather being heavily medicated, traumatized, or a combination of the two. As one viewer wrote, "I've been in his shoes before, and having to testify against someone who's tried to kill me, I sounded monotone too. PTSD causes that, and it's him revisiting the scene, so that doesn't help." And from the way Heath appeared to visibly struggle when recalling the condition he found his wife in, to the way he smiled when talking about her, some believed Heath was just a nice guy who had been through something tragic. He just sounds defeated to me. Having to relive everything all over again at this trial has got to be torture for him. The sweet smile on that man's face when he talks about his wife is heartbreaking. It's obvious the only reprieve he has from his grief is when he's asked to relive their sweet life together. Even so, a portion of the internet still had a hunch the stepfather wasn't entirely innocent. Check his computers, check the cameras, check all of their phones. He's involved or responsible. Currently, however, only Carly was on trial, and now the jury had to answer one question: was she innocent or guilty? After 4 days of testimony, the defense gave their closing statement. The attorneys insisted Carly was not a bad kid, but a kid who was experiencing significant mental health issues that were worsened by medication.
And while she was having a state of psychosis and an episode of acute stress on March 19th, she lost herself in what was the perfect storm.
The prosecution, however, emphasized what the jury knew. Carly had killed her mother. Carly had tried to kill her stepfather. Carly hid the kitchen camera in the fridge, tampering with evidence. All of which seemingly proved she wasn't as out of touch with reality as the defense wanted the court to believe.
She was not insane at the time that this happened. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew the difference between right and wrong.
The jury deliberated for 2 hours before coming back with a verdict: guilty on all charges. The teen stared back in seeming disbelief. At first, Heath Smiley closed his eyes, the same way he had when recounting painful memories during his testimony. However, as Carly began to cry, the stepfather appeared to mouth, "Are you okay?" Then, before the sentencing, he again appeared to mouth something to Carly: "You'll be okay. I love you." But would Carly ever be okay again? This was a teenage girl who had committed murder, a crime her sentencing revealed. She'd have the rest of her life to contemplate. Yes, Carly received life in prison without the possibility of parole. The reaction to the trial, however, was mixed. For some, including the prosecution, it felt like a fitting punishment.
Carly Gregg is evil, and that's not easy to say, but the truth of the matter is sometimes evil comes in young packages, small packages, and this is one of those cases.
For others, The fact that a 15-year-old girl will face the rest of her life behind bars, guilty or not, was indicative of a much larger problem. Was this a moment of genuine mental instability, or are we looking at something far more calculated? Regardless, we have to ask, is locking up a 15-year-old for life really the solution? Or is there something deeply wrong with how we handle cases like this in America today? And then there were those who were still convinced there was one person who hadn't been properly investigated.
Is this the look that you would give to your stepdaughter who unalived your wife that you loved and then shot you?
I wonder if he convinced that girl to kill her mama.
You can't tell me there wasn't more to this story.
However, it seems this story isn't over just yet. On September 26, Carly's attorneys filed an appeal for a new trial, citing new evidence and trial errors.
Both sides had to get different expert witnesses to come in and testify, and that just showed the sort of the complexity of the case. I think everybody was rushed on this case.
One piece of evidence came from someone who believed Carly was exactly where she belonged, her biological father, Gregg. Carly's attorney claimed that they had been told by a reporter for the Jackson, Mississippi news station WLBT that the father had revealed Carly suffered from auditory hallucinations as a child during an unaired portion of their interview. However, according to the station, that never happened, and seemingly, in response to the accusation, they released the full interview with Kevin, which provided a clear picture of the man both Ashley and Carly allegedly feared. During the interview, Kevin claimed that, despite what Dr. Pickett suggested during the trial, he did have bipolar disorder.
I have been previously diagnosed by physicians with bipolar multiple times, and I agree.
However, it should be noted the information the father gave about the past wasn't always factual.
We were married in 2025. We met in 2024. We moved to Nashville in 2026.
During the interview, he also opened up about the emotional roller coaster he experienced upon learning about what happened to his ex-wife, and at the hands of his own daughter.
Ashamed, embarrassed, angry, upset, very sad. I loved her too. You know, we were married for almost a decade.
In the interview, Kevin confirmed he had done narcotics in the past, but denied the allegations he had been abusive towards Carly. Kevin claimed Carly was a good kid and, as had been stated throughout her trial, gifted. He alleged that it was only after he and his wife split up that Carly's mental health began to decline and began having thoughts of ending her life. Still, Kevin had no question that his daughter knew exactly what she was doing on March 19.
That girl knew right from wrong. That girl is not insane. That was a very dumb defense, if you ask me.
It's Kevin's hope that this time behind bars will be exactly what Carly needs to reflect on her actions.
I don't want to judge her. I hope she finds Jesus. I hope she can reconcile with what she did.
After all, she won't be walking free anytime soon. In October, the appeal from Carly's legal team was denied. And with that, Carly's shot at freedom received the same fate as her promising future and loving mother, gone for good.
Sadly, she's going to spend the rest of her life in jail. She'll die in prison. And the one person that would have come to see her every day, she killed.
While you're here, check out our other videos on true crime cases, this time on parents who may be the culprits, and consider subscribing to stay updated.